She's the midnight mistress of fairies and dark mischief. He's the paranormal beacon of mystic fairs and government leaking. If the dark side had a prom, they would be the king and queen. They live the metaphysical and make a wicked awesome team. From every single culture in every corner of the globe, they creep the lore and legends just to keep you in the know. For some it's hyperbole, fantastical and myth. For them it's all too real and your paradigm will shift. It's forever Halloween with all treats and no tricks. He's got a thing for witches and she's all Stevie Nicks. So welcome to our carnival of the weird and the bizarre, where UFOs and curses take shape beneath the stars. Sit back, relax, open your mind and stay a few. It's time for John and Stacey, and do we have something for you? Welcome to the Paranormal Sideshow with your host, John and Stacey Edwards of ParanormalSideshow.com. Hello and welcome to the Paranormal Sideshow. I'm your host, John Edwards, and joined as always by my lovely wife, Stacey.
Hello.
And wait a second. I don't think that's fitting this time.
You don't think so?
I mean, you know, I love being original and all that good stuff, but I feel like I got to get something else going here. Is that okay?
Sure. You do the opening.
You feel like a little demonetization?
Sure, why not?
All right, so I got to get in the mood for this because this is going to be a special episode, guys and girls and undecideds. That feels kind of good, don't it?
I like that.
All right. Not from the high desert, and actually in the great Northeast. We bid you all good morning or good evening, depending on where you may be in this great interwebs of ours. That's right. We're saying RIP to the greatest. And we will be celebrating the life and some of the great accomplishments, in our opinion, of the late, great Art Bell.
Yes.
I have several people in my life that have inspired me. I have people in different walks of things I do that have inspired me. But in what we do here and what I dreamed up in 2009 to start doing, there was only one other cat doing the podcast, but I wasn't doing this for podcast.
Right.
And we'll talk about that a little bit later. There's a tease for you, as they would do on Coast to Coast. Coming up after the break, we will talk more about why John got into this. So, yeah, just the big elephant in the room there. We will talk about that big, huge segment of the show. This is going to be a very special edition. I really am glad that all of you are along with us to enjoy this. We are going to have some fun. We are going to cut loose a bit. We're going to tell some stories, some personal stories. We're going to tell some creepy stories. And we are going to tie a lot of it back to our love for Coast to Coast AM. And we have never been scared to celebrate other programs. We've never been scared to celebrate other people in the field. We believe it's healthy. And we also believe in that in everything that we do. So for instance, there's no secret of my professional wrestling past. In that past, I still, I always celebrated others. I still to this day support my friends who are still in it as a fan would do, instead of some of the guys who were too good to buy t-shirts,
right,
or too good to be a fan or cheer or things like that. Right. I believe if you truly and genuinely love what you do, you should celebrate other people that do it well.
Yes. You should be excited for them.
Very excited for them and for the field, whatever that field may be. This field we've been in since 1997. That's a part that I'm proud of on one end. On the other end, I'm like, my God. My God, it was 1997, and that sounds like a long time ago now. You know, but this will go all the way back. And later on in the show, this will go all the way back for a lot of that. And, so it's really an opportunity to share some personal moments, more so than what we normally share with you guys, which would be more along the hashtag mommy daddy time. Or
the embarrassing moments.
Or the embarrassing moments and stuff like that. This is more all paranormal related. And I can guarantee you this, you will hear some creepiness. So prepare yourselves for that. But first, as we always do, we're going to talk a little bit about what happened this week and what didn't happen this week. And I know before we went on air, you were going over some of your notes.
Right.
And you were trying to tell me something, but I was getting in the zone. I was finding the song I wanted to play there.
Well, I was sitting in the other room. I wasn't in the studio. We were sitting in the other room, but I could see down the hallway.
Right.
And the door was open.
Right.
And I could kind of see into the podcast room, but I was sitting on the couch and I was kind of reading over my notes and looking at my news. And out of the corner of my eye, there was a black shadow in this room. And it just went from the side that I sit on all the way over to the side that you sit on.
Now that's interesting.
So it ended up over there.
Well, it can stay over here. That could be a number of people. And that is very interesting considering some of our subject matter.
Yes.
That is coming up.
I mean, I believe we were actually discussing the Art Bell segment a bit back and forth too.
Okay. All right. All right.
So, and it was just, I saw it out of the corner of my eye, but I definitely saw the movement.
Yeah. And I'll go ahead and spill the beans on this. Art.
What?
Oh my God. Did you hear that?
No. What did you hear?
I heard a voice. I heard a whisper, a few words. Can we stop and save? And if there is something there, this will all be left in.
Okay, hold on.
All right. So here's what happened. We make sure that's recording correctly. You can leave all this in just as is. Okay. So momentarily, this is so weird. We were sitting here doing the show. You heard what happened just now. I think I said Art, and there was a whisper, couple of words, completely dead on into the microphone.
Yeah, you could hear it just on the recording.
And I stopped because I heard it so clearly, and I'm obviously looking at Stacey. And it was so funny because what I was about to say was much like he had. We built. We used to go to a studio and do this. We had 2 studios. One was built for us. The original in 2010 and 11, 12, 13. We went to a studio which was actually a TV station, and we had a podcast built for us there, a podcast studio, regular studio, had our producer in the other room, straight up radio. Huge fans of radio. And then we had somebody contact us, and we had another studio literally built for us. And we did the video there and everything. And we decided we really wanted to do it on our own. And we really wanted that ambiance. So we went and found the creepiest house we could find, and legitimately from the mid 1800s in the Northeast. Come on. It doesn't get any better than that.
That's true.
We're literally 45 minutes from Stephen King. So it can't get much better than that. So, in a place that it's dark most of the time and cold.
And I did just see a shadow person in here.
Just seen a shadow person, and we just caught something. I won't say what yet because we have not analyzed this.
No, we actually just went back and listened to it.
Here's where I get animated, okay? Because we've covered all that. Now, let me say this, okay? We have our studio in our home. It's always the studio. So whatever kind of energy we have in here, we conjure in here.
Right. Yeah, it stays closed up after.
Stays closed up.
All the other times.
The only time this is open, because Ariana doesn't like this door to be open.
Yeah.
Just full disclosure. For some reason, she doesn't like this room. And so we don't have a reason to open it, really.
No.
And we just keep it closed.
I mean, the attic access is in here, so if I need to in the attic, but other than that.
Right, but other than that, we've got a nice studio. It's got room, space, it's a studio. And this is how we like it. So the energy in here is always this kind of energy. It's never anything else but this kind of energy. And, so the door was open, which was rare. Stacey sees the shadow. We're already having weird things happen. And then whatever happened just now, there was an unexplainable couple of words in whisper form that came through on our headphones. And
very strange.
I heard it as I was talking, stopped, and we did stop and go back. And I was like, I have to listen to this. So we left all that in there. Have at it. Have at it. I could tell you this much. I won't have a chance to analyze this by the time this goes to print.
No.
So, have at it. I'm not even going to try. Let me know, you guys, if you hear it, if you know what it says. And I'd be very interested to get your messages, your emails, your letters. Please let us know what you think you just heard, because I can assure you this: we never play with you.
No.
We never tease you, and we never would. So it's very interesting. There was something I can't explain. Stacey was not even up on her microphone, and I was otherwise engaged by saying other words. So whatever came across that on its own.
Very strange.
Very strange.
Yes, very strange.
So going on with that, Mercury is gone. Well,
Gone completely?
Hopefully it's still there.
You mean Mercury in retrograde?
Yes. Mercury in retrograde. Goodbye, good riddance. Undoubtedly, there's still a shadow of Mercury in retrograde for a few more days, but I can already feel the difference.
Yes.
Today was entirely different.
Yes.
It was a different kind of energy.
I agree.
It was very nice. And the new moon kind of ushered it in, but then we went through kind of a weird day, and I tried helping you through that. And on that weird day, I decided to go the other way to Canada. I had something I had to do for Bruce Wayne job, and it took me all the way to the Canadian border. And I mean, I could tickle a Mountie. I was so close. So I was about 3 feet from the Canadian border, but which is not odd. In Maine, you can get to the Canadian border pretty easily, and we do. This was in Vermont. So I had to go through New Hampshire.
A long way around.
I had to go through the mountains, hit New Hampshire, and so the story here is those mountains. I haven't seen mountains in a while.
No, it's been a minute.
It's been a minute, and especially mountains that are like this. So it's just gorgeous, right? And I took some videos and showed you, but there's this fog coming in, and the clouds are coming down because the mountains are pretty good size, and the clouds are coming into the mountains and the snow caps, and just gorgeous, right? Absolutely gorgeous. Well, what I didn't tell you, and what I waited for the show, is as I was coming back and making my 4-hour trek back home, I opened the sunroof, even though it was 31 degrees, I believe.
Yes, you do that a lot.
Right. It just doesn't bother me. I like it. So I'm very unsafe with the sunroof open at night, because I'm basically just leaning back,
looking at the stars.
So
I should put a lock on that thing.
So I'm hoping that someone has their headlights on.
Right.
And there's not a moose. Which happens.
There could have been a moose where you were.
Yes, I passed signs that actually said things like, "This, moose will kill you next 2 miles." Are you,
Moose are armed.
Why are you even on this road? Are you crazy? Please turn back. It's crazy, and everything up there is named Moose something.
Well, yeah,
like Moose Kill Holler, or it's really nuts. So anyway. I'm going through these mountains, this mountain pass, and I'm looking up, and I'm looking at the stars. The Big Dipper's right on top of me, and it's beautiful, man. And there's no street lights. I'm talking 40 miles, 50 miles. There's no lights, no houses.
Oh, I bet it's beautiful.
It's gorgeous. And it's that touch the sky kind of feeling, So I'm digging it, man. There's times I'm just stopping the car, It took me an hour and a half longer to get home than it should have.
It did take you quite some time to get home.
Right. Well, that's because you know me. Mm-hmm. I stop. I admire beauty, and I can't help myself.
I knew when you sent me the text that said we have to come up here that it was going to take you a while.
Right. Right. So I was staring at the sky, and all of a sudden, I seen something moving that I could have sworn was a star. Mm-hmm. But it had no blink. It wasn't a plane.
Right.
There was no blinkies. There was no blinkies. My God, I sound very professional right now. There was no blinkies and no buzz. There was no blinking lights. There was no discerning things that would make you think aircraft.
Right. Right.
Still not saying it's not an aircraft.
Right.
Okay. Wasn't going to say anything. Wasn't going to get excited. But I started mentally trying to give telepathy as I always do.
Right.
It's a thing I do. So if it's a UFO, I'm trying to
contact it.
Mm-hmm. You know? So I thought as hard as I could, please reverse your trajectory. Please reverse your trajectory. You know, like, please turn around, do something. Mm-hmm. And I keep thinking it, but I'm serious. I ain't playing around. And that's the whole thing with this people. Mm-hmm. If you believe in it, you know, something's going to happen. If you're going in this all half-ass, mm-hmm. you know, that's why when you get onto some Native American burial grounds, that's why you get your ass kicked. Because they believe it. Because
you don't believe enough to respect it.
No, they believe it.
Oh, yeah.
You know, so the power of the mind, even if the paranormal was not real, mm-hmm. that power of the mind and that little chunk of the mind that we actually use, and that weird big question is why we have so much brain we don't know what it's for. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Where I'm getting at here?
Right. There's
a lot to that. Mm-hmm. Okay. So anyway, I'm sitting there thinking that's, you know, please do something. So lo and behold, it does a U.
Really?
And starts coming back. Now, it still could be a plane. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All of a sudden, it completely darts.
Oh, wow.
To the right. And it was faster than it should be able to move with mm-hmm. anything I've ever seen move.
So not a plane.
Not a plane that I would be familiar with.
Right.
Okay. It did do a U, but a plane could do a U.
Right.
And then this was way up there. Okay. I even thought space station. Mm-hmm. I even thought maybe I'm seeing, because it's hard to describe, but it's like when you're watching something from the ISS, mm-hmm. the International Space Station, and you see like the space dust or something, like you see it just moving.
Right.
Static. Mm-hmm. But there's no lights or anything blinking. And that's what this was. It was moving static mm-hmm. in with the stars, like a star in disguise.
Right.
Right. You know, I don't think my telepathy had anything to do with this. Okay. That was just a bonus.
Right.
So it turns and horseshoes. Mm-hmm. And then it just.
Well, see, I don't think a plane could do that.
I don't think it could either. Mm-hmm. Okay. I don't know what it was. I don't know what it was. I don't want to say what it was. All I can say is.
It was weird.
It was weird, and I wanted to share it here. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to share it for the first time with you.
Yeah, you didn't tell me that.
Well, on purpose. Yeah. I thought we were recording like the next day.
I'm surprised you didn't run off the road, because your head was probably out of the sunroof at this point.
You know I was screaming. I was. I was screaming at it because I'm insane. Okay? I have Bruce Wayne job where I have to be sane. Mm-hmm. All the time, unfortunately, very sane. Mm-hmm. And this was one of those days I had to go do some of the bad stuff you do at the Bruce Wayne job. Right. I had to go for very far out, and I had to take care of something with somebody, and it's hard. Mm-hmm. It's hard. I put a lot of effort into what I do, and I do a lot. I'm trying to get somewhere else. Right. So I put like the extra effort, like, you know, mm-hmm. not the 100%, the 150%.
Well, to be fair, you put extra effort in anyway. Mm-hmm. I mean, you always do. That's just how you are at work. Unfortunately,
I can't help that. And it's the whole candle burning at both ends thing.
Right.
You know, you can just see that. Mm-hmm. That speech someday from somebody.
Like, you're not the kind of person that just does anything halfway. I've told you this before.
Yes.
You're all or nothing. Either you're going to put every bit of effort in extra, or you're not going to do it.
I like the analogy that you trained me on that with the car. Do you want to talk about that?
So true. Well, when I first mentioned it to you about your personality, because I don't think you really realized that you're that way, but you are. I use the example like when we were dating and we would be driving in the car and it would be a little bit cold and I'd ask you to turn the heat on. You'd turn the heat all the way up. And then it would be too hot. So you turn the heat all the way down, turn the air all the way up. So it was either all heat or all air. There was no, you didn't use the middle. You didn't use the warm. So and that's your personality. You're either all hot or all cold. There is no middle ground. No middle ground.
Yeah.
So.
Well, there's probably good to that.
There is.
You know, some people live in the middle.
That's true.
And, you know, I'm sure there's positive points to that as well. I'm sure it's a very safe place to be. And, you know,
I feel like I'm your middle.
Well, you know, I would have to agree that you were definitely my yang.
There you go.
You're definitely the my chi. You're my inner peace. So I need you to not go nuclear.
Yes.
Most of the time.
Yes.
And speaking of nuclear, ParanormalSideshow.com. That's your address to go fund everything nuclear. On Facebook, it's Facebook.com/ParanormalSideshow. There's a bunch of nukes going on there. On the Twitter, it's at Sideshow97. North Korea has actually been known to put nukes there. On Instagram, Hot Nuke Dam. It's John and Stacey Edwards. YouTube.com/ParanormalSideshow. They keep demonetizing our nukes. Please take a quick moment, if you would, if you don't mind, if you will, to like, follow, and subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and etc., especially etc., because that's where we get the most likes. So please go there and please show us some love. Throw us some love because we're some high quality H2O, but we would really, really enjoy it and showcase your inner weird and support your favorite paranormal podcast by checking out all our t-shirt designs. teepublic.com/user/paranormal sideshow. That's teepublic.com/user/paranormal sideshow. That's got our hashtag believer shirts on there. And my God, do we believe? And after this, brothers and sisters, after this episode, you too can believe. Put your hands up to the sky and believe. I said more like Macho Man Randy Savage right there than a preacher. But yeah, it's oh, by the way, rest in peace, Bruno Sammartino. I'm going to throw that out in the middle there. He's a former WWF champion. Mm-hmm. He was the living legend. They can't really call him that anymore. They probably dropped the living part.
Probably. Is he just the legend now?
But, you know, that was his moniker for many, many years. That was the first thing I thought. Does that make me a bad person?
No, it makes you full of common sense and wonderment.
Okay, we'll go with that. I think it probably makes me a bad person. But ParanormalSideshow.com, you can go there and you can find all the stories that Stacey talks about. And she adds all kinds of extra, you know, puts the links there and puts all kinds of work. Go show Stacey some love. Love Stacey because Stacey deserves love. And speaking of love, it's about time for some paranormal news. That's my whisper.
Let's get to the news.
Let's.
But first, do you want to tell them what happened between the segments?
All right. So we were just doing a segment. Mm-hmm. And when we go from the intro to the news, mm-hmm. we do that in a segment. We stop recording. We reset. We get our news. And all that good stuff. And when we did that, we had hot mics still. Mm-hmm. And something else came through. We weren't recording. Oh. So then we gave it a minute to try to see if it wanted to say something else. Mm-hmm. Gave us the wee willikers.
It did. I'm still going to go back and listen to that section.
Pretty interesting stuff. There's definitely some activity happening.
Yes.
As we're doing this, and we knew this was going to be a creepy show, but we didn't expect...
No, actual voices.
Yeah, we did not expect this. So, all right, continue with your news, young lady.
All right, so let's get into the news. So, of course, the first thing we're going to talk about is Mr. Art Bell,
Yes.
who passed away recently.
Yes.
And I believe they've already done the autopsy, and I'm pretty sure the official cause of death was COPD.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so.
Something he was struggling with in his later years, still taken from us way too young, in my opinion.
Yes, 72.
Very,
but still very full of life and energy.
Yeah.
Well, I thought I'd just go over a couple things about his life.
Please.
About how he got into, the radio and doing the coast to coast.
And you just said it, but for those of you who don't know, if you didn't get it from the very first of the show, and I know we did the little tribute there, Coast to Coast AM, it's had tens of millions of viewers. I believe 12 million, 14 million a night at one point. And on so many radio stations, and forgive me, I don't know, 400 affiliates, maybe somewhere around there, 360 to 400 affiliates across the nation. And it was that show, and we'll get more to that and the personal connections there and everything that there's so many of us in the field have with the show. But Stacey, please continue.
Well, when Art was younger, he actually was in the Air Force.
Right.
And during the Vietnam War, he actually operated a radio station during the war that played anti-war music to the servicemen.
Oh, yeah.
And following his time in the service, he loved the radio and working as a disc jockey and stuff like that. So he continued that, and he worked for an English language station in Japan. And I think he actually set a Guinness World Record for broadcasting like so many hours straight, like 116 hours straight.
Wow.
Just continuous I could not even imagine that.
Wow, that's amazing.
That would be really difficult.
Very cool. And especially in Japan.
Yeah, well, I think it was like a fundraiser kind of thing. Like he was raising money for orphans that were left stranded from the war. He was very into that effort.
Right.
So eventually he came back to the United States, and he started doing the overnight talk radio, which was not actually paranormal right at the beginning.
Right.
I think it was more political.
Right.
But it pretty quickly transformed into just the paranormal topics, because those seem to generate the most interest, the most people wanting to hear about it and listen. And I don't think there was anything like that at the time.
I'm lighting some
some bay leaves.
Bay leaves there for Art.
Yes.
And we've heard him talk about this. He was bored to death. I read some quotes, talking politics, bored him to tears. And
can imagine.
And he did the overnights, because he loved the overnights. And his whole thing for that was the night people. It was more interesting, all the hubbub from the day is not there. All the, the same reason we record when we record, regardless of it being live or not, we record at night and in the middle of the night. Oh yeah.
But a lot of the times we do,
because it's us.
It's when we're most awake.
It's us. It's our, it's just really what we love doing. And even if I sacrifice, cause I have to get up at, 6 o'clock.
Right.
So it doesn't matter. I'm very much a nap guy anyway in the very late afternoon. So
you are a nap guy.
I love naps. But yeah, it's he loved doing the overnights, and and God Almighty, I'm glad he did, because so many of those nights.
Yeah, and it's a lot easier to listen.
Yeah.
At night when you're not doing anything else.
Absolutely.
But, when he started Coast to Coast, it just took off in popularity, and eventually it was syndicated nationally, like back in 93. And he just countless programs. I mean, it was just every night, and guests and paranormal topics. And we're going to talk about some of his more interesting and memorable.
For us, yeah.
Yes,
I'm sure everybody has their favorites. It's kind of like Mystery Science Theater, right?
Yes.
Everybody has their list.
But he continued to do that until about 2002, where he didn't full-time host anymore, it was George Norrie.
Right.
But he did go back and still do episodes. And, if you look in the archives in Coast to Coast, it tells you which ones are Art's and which ones are George's. And he actually started a couple other projects. He did the Midnight in the Desert. And I think there was like an Art Bell Somewhere in Time where they played old episodes of Coast to Coast.
Right.
And, he just really did it every day and all the way up until the end. He just loved it. It was his passion. So,
yeah, I mean, it's, absolutely. I mean, he tried, the satellite radio, and did everything, but really coast to coast. I mean, some of the classics of coast to coast. And I remember, oh my God, I've been doing, some of the jobs I've had, it required a lot of overnight just because you'd be there in a town and, there's nothing better than driving, 1 o'clock in the morning and you have the open lines going, somebody's calling in. And Art, man, it was not just somebody calling in, but his ability to capture and his ability to be cool with whoever was calling in. I mean, he would be inquisitive though. And I appreciated that from an interviewer's standpoint.
Right.
I remember on the Bob Lazar episode. And I don't know if you have that one or not.
I don't think that I do.
But the Area 51 guy, he really he had already done his expose on network TV and all this stuff. But Art had him on and he was talking and he asked him certain questions that were so interesting to me. And I could tell what he was doing. He was like talking about a professor and he was like, well, what did you think of that professor? Because he already knew things about him, really trying to get into his credit, really trying to get the most out of somebody,
Right.
But he always treated people with respect and he took the story, even if they called in and said, hey, I just had coitus with a gray alien.
Yeah, okay? I don't think he screened any of his calls. I think he just took whoever
that was his
called.
deal. That was his deal, not screening calls. And so, you got to admire the fact that he could take that professionally and still turn it into something.
I feel like if it got too crazy, he'd just be like, well, I have to go now.
Yeah, which oddly enough, we will get into one of those later. It's kind of funny, but no, and inspiration wise, I won't go any further on this. I will say this. So, I listened to Coast to Coast in the late 90s after our incident. We've talked about our initial incident in depth, but I am going to revisit it when we get here in a moment. Actually, I'll go ahead and go into this now.
Okay. Well, we do have a lot of new listeners, so it's probably a good idea.
We do. I'm going to go ahead and go into this now. Art started talking about something that was very close to us. And sometimes when you break up with somebody, every song on the radio seems to be written about you.
Right.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Right. I mean, you can relate to all of it. You can
relate to all of it, right? Well, sometimes when you have an experience, and I've likened it before to victims of crime or victims of tragedy or even a certain disease. If you have a certain disease, I know when I had to suffer through Bell palsy a few years back, and I'm completely better and I've never had to revisit, thank God. I woke up one day and half my face was completely gone, was slumped, paralyzed. I couldn't move my nose, my lips on that side of my face, my eye was drooped. And I'm not a vain person, but everything I've done has been done through my communication and my face. So whether, whatever it was, it's been really my communication and whatnot. And it means a lot to me. It was a very humbling experience. But this is not about the disease. I'm just saying at that point, I had never thought about this before. But I went and found Facebook groups that were support groups for this. And I hate to admit that was not something that was ever on my mind. I never thought about the lupus groups, and I never thought about, because it had not happened to me.
Right.
So when this happened to me, the most important thing in my world became that Facebook group. And it was my hope. It was my understanding. It was people that actually knew.
They could relate to you.
Exactly. And as much as you love me, there was no way you could relate to what was going on. And these people could. So that goes back to the paranormal. When 1997 happened, in the late summer of 97, and Stacey and I were in our in Stacey's duplex apartment. We were very poor. We were college age kids. and we were dating. I was making her hamburgers, and she was on the couch in the other room, and we were in Bristol, Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
In Bristol, Tennessee, in July, it's hot.
Yes, it was very hot.
So it was, and I can't remember what program was on. I don't know if you were watching.
Yeah, I was watching. It was like Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune.
Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But she was in the other room. There was a open door, like a arch, an archway, to go between the kitchen and into the next room, which would have been the living room where she was.
Mm-hmm.
And I was facing the west, and directly to the west.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a kitchen window right out in front of me, so I can see out. And I'm on the stove, flipping burger.
Mm-hmm.
And the door was open to my right, to the outside, the back porch door.
Mm-hmm.
And that back porch door was open, just like the door, the front door was open beside Stacey, somewhat beside Stacey in the living room, to let some air go through, because we had no air conditioning.
Yes, we were trying to make a breeze happen.
Make a breeze, yeah. So
and we couldn't see each other. Like the doorway was not big; it was just a regular sized doorway, and it was just all solid wall. So I couldn't see you.
Yeah,
you couldn't see me.
Yeah, it was brick. I believe it was. I mean, it was solid, and there was even a cupboard behind me.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was no seeing into the other room whatsoever.
Nope.
You actually had to holler to each other to be able to hear. So yeah, there was no way. But to my right came in a black shadow figure, and it was full size person. I don't want to say man, even though it seemed like a man.
Mm-hmm.
So shadow man, I'm just going to say it because it did seem like a man.
Mm-hmm.
He was in the running position.
Mm-hmm.
If you did a cardboard cutout of a man in a running position, and it seemed more because he was going that fast, that you're only seeing that one position.
Right.
But it seemed like it took forever, because he went through the living room. I mean, he went through the kitchen where I'm at. He beside our table. The door didn't open. The screen door was closed. It never opened. He came through. I seen him clear as a bell, not out of the corner of my eye, mind you. I saw this person full on, and it was solid. It was a black shadow, but it was solid. Now, the afternoon sun was beating in to our kitchen. There's no reason I should have seen what I seen.
Right.
And there's no explanation for what I seen. None whatsoever. And it went through. And as far as my story goes, that's when I heard we had a shade in the next room. And it was a dollar store shade that went up in the window, and it would pull down, just a plastic shade. And if you pulled them too far, they would break, and you would have to hand roll them back up. If you pulled them down just right, you could give them a little tug, and they would roll up on their own.
Right.
This one had been broken, and we had already pulled it down, so it just stayed down, basically.
Yeah.
And it was pulled down all the way. Okay, it didn't go up on its own anymore. I heard, in a split second, I heard that shade go, and then I heard Stacey go, John, and I said, I don't want to talk about it. That's what I hollered back. And so we didn't talk about it until the next day. So Stacey, and as I've said, this is for new listeners, but this all ties into this. What on your end of things?
So on my end of things, what I saw was I was sitting, with my back on the couch with my back to the wall. Back of the couch was to the wall, and I was looking at the TV. So the kitchen door was on my left, and I was looking directly at the TV, And this shadow man is exactly what you described. I felt like it was a man, and he was in the running position, arms, legs, the whole thing. And it came out of the kitchen door, ran between me and the television. So I saw it full on saw it. It blocked out the light from the television, completely blocked the television. And it ran, and instead of running straight and going out the front door, because it could have just run straight across and gone out the front door, it actually ran towards where the couch was and went out the window, which was at the end of the couch. And the shade was down because we left it down. Like you said, it was broken. And it just went straight out the window. And as soon as it hit that window, the shade flew up and just completely rolled up. And when I saw it, it's like you said, it happened so quick, but it seemed like it took forever because my head actually turned and followed it as it went. As soon as I saw it, I just followed it right over to the window. And I sat there, it felt like forever. I guess it wasn't. And after it went out the window and the shade went up, that's when I hollered for you. Yeah. And, and then we decided we weren't going to talk about what we had just seen. But then when we did talk about it, it was exactly the same thing. Right. And there's no way I could have known what you saw, and no way you could have known what I saw because we were in separate rooms.
No, there's not.
And it was just the weirdest.
And we were
strangest thing.
At that time period, we were having some time prompt phenomena. Mm-hmm. We were having some 1111s. We were having 333 mostly. Mm-hmm. We were having some other odd things happen. Mm-hmm. Stacey hearing things as she was doing her hair. Mm-hmm. Combing her hair, I think she heard something clear as a bell. We had some weird things happen with a Ouija board. Before this happened, before we seen the shadow person, we had misused a Ouija board. And I had misused a Ouija board. So yeah, there's a lot to it. But the shadow person, just on the shadow person alone, there's no explanation. Mm-mm. There is not. And so listening to Art Bell back then, because we're not done. We actually moved a couple times, but we ended up in Charlotte. Mm-hmm. And you know what? I'm gonna be very accurate with you guys. We were in Gastonia, North Carolina. I worked in Charlotte. We were in a house probably from the 50s or 60s.
Yeah, the ranch
style house. Mm-hmm. And that house was the most haunted place until the Black House that I had ever been in. And at night, Stacey would basically sleep underneath of me because we would hear people just straight up
walking around in our kitchen.
Just straight up walking around the kitchen.
Just all night long.
It was right down the hall from us, but it was straight up just walking. Mm-hmm. And I mean, terrifying. Yeah. And so
we stayed up all night a lot in that house.
Yeah.
Because we just didn't want to go to bed.
We would actually take Max alerts. And we would.
When you could do that.
Yeah, we would take Max alerts and stay up all night. And because we didn't want to sleep. Yeah. We played fishing. Yeah, fishing games. Yeah. Because of how creepy it was. And that only gets us to the next place we lived. Mm-hmm. And the next house we lived, this is all corresponds with the Coast to Coast deal, because this would have been around 2001. Mm-hmm. And we were in there in 2000, but this happened around 2001 and maybe even into 2002, because we had a cat and we no longer had Mulder. Our cat's name was Mulder. Beautiful Maine Coon cat. And we no longer had Mulder. So I had been seeing some things out of the corner of my eye for weeks, days or weeks. I know it had been a while. And it was in the corner of my eye, as you'll hear people say sometimes, but it was down in the floor, and it was sure as hell something there. And I would think that it's the cat. Yeah, because we'd had a cat for so long. Just used to it. Yeah. It got pretty severe. We were in the kitchen one night just hanging out because Stacey and I are weird. I don't know why we were just standing in the kitchen. And we were probably looking for a snack or something. Probably. And we like snacks. We it happened. And I think Stacey's the one that brought it up to me.
Well, we both saw it, and I wouldn't have said anything except your head went down, same as mine. Like I looked down, and yours did. And I had been seeing it for a while, and it didn't dawn on me until right before then that that whole time I had been thinking that I was seeing the cat and we didn't have a cat. And it had occurred to me. So when it happened again that time, I looked because I wanted to see what it was, but I noticed that you looked too. And so I was like, did you just see that? And that's when we realized we had both been seeing the little black shadows down on the floor.
So
very strange.
So that got me looking things up again. So here's where all this comes into play. Okay. So Art on Coast to Coast, sometime around 2001, was talking about shadow people as it was a new phenomenon. And well, it was a new, but he brought people on that talked about it being from the beginning of time, and the theories ranged from alien to demonic to another breed of people. So all these theories, I would hear them on Coast to Coast because what happened to us in 97, there wasn't many people that were going to listen to you then. There wasn't a lot of groups. You couldn't just go join a paranormal group on Facebook, and you couldn't go find one easily. The closest one to us that we could find was about 3 hours away. So we were our paranormal group. And we studied and we bought books and we investigated and we did everything we could to learn. But Coast to Coast AM was there to find the other people that had experienced our disease, our victimization,
right,
and the thing that had happened to us. So that goes in from 97 to 2001. 2001. Art's talking about shadow people, and it's all the rage. And this is something you got to remember now, folks. This happened to us with what we call, the experience, the
event. The
event is the proper name. So the event happened, and then we saw the shadow things in the corner of our eye. For weeks, and those things stayed with us for a few weeks after that, and then they were gone.
Yep.
They were absolutely gone. Now, I believe, not to get off subject, but I believe those were astral critters. I believe those were little people that were travelers, and they just stayed for a while, and they left, and that happens. And if you can look that up, and it seems to fit. Okay? But Art was talking about shadow people, and man, oh man, did he talk about it good. And he really got you thinking, and he brought guests on, he brought authors on, he brought Native Americans on to talk about, their legend and lore about this. And I remember Thunderstrikes was the Native American's name. And he said it went back to like 1200 BC. Now this is off memory, folks. I apologize. But he had to go to the council. And the council, he had to get approval to even talk about it because it was such a big deal. Okay. So our buddy, who we brought on the show before, Mr. Alan Marston, we like to feel like we kind of created him. He's a spinoff of the show. Every good show has a spinoff, right?
That's right.
But Alan, our buddy and our friend, he actually does talks, and it was surprising to me when he did the shadow people talk. So he doesn't even know this, but I've avoided the conversation with him. So I asked him about his other lecture, which was, something else we had talked about on the show quite a bit. But I avoided the shadow people conversation like the plague, because I didn't want to get into it because it bothers me.
Right.
And so Art, I implore you to go listen to the Shadow People episodes. There's a couple of them you can find with Art Bell. I want to hear from you guys. What have you seen? Have you seen shadow people? What do you believe them to be? Do you believe it to be alien? Do you believe it to be human spirits? Do you believe it to be something completely new And do you believe it to also be something that is of the last 20 years? Like, is it a newer phenomenon? Is it some reason that there's bleed through? Now, I will tell you this. I truly have been troubled by this. And I didn't know if it was some Manhattan Project or something that had caused a split, a rift in time even. You know? It's really odd. Now, it gets a little creepier. Now, this don't have to do with coast to coast, but this has to do with our shadow people.
Well, let me say this before you get off the coast to coast thing. Something that I am going to link to that's really interesting is from one of the first times he talked about shadow people. I don't remember which time it was, but I have a link that is archived off Art Bell's website where people had sent in drawings of what they had seen.
Right.
Shadow people. And it's like 2 pages of just all these drawings that has a little, description of who wrote it and when they saw it. And some of them are really interesting to look at.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
and it's also really cool because of because he's cool like that, just asking for things like that. And people want to share.
Yeah, like they took the time to draw what they saw. Send it in.
I get dozens of messages on our show, and I enjoy every single one of them, and I make friends with most of them because everybody has a story, and everybody deserves to have that story heard. And I really enjoy people that are just enthusiasts, that believe, true believers. So with the shadow people. I don't know if it was my first time at Waverly or another time.
You've been
a few times.
A few times.
So, but I was with my BFF and inseparable investigator at the time. And he still would be if he hadn't seen all that he needed to see, in the immortal words of Tim Clark. Longtime listeners of all our shows will know him as Tim the Tech Guy from our Haunted South days. Tim would do our top 10 list on every one of our podcasts, and he was an integral part of our team. Tim got to the point with us where he said, "John, I've seen everything I need to see." So shadow people with Tim played a big part in his entire life. When he was a kid, he grew up in a haunted house. Now, Tim, I thought, was a skeptic because Tim had a skeptical electronic mind. He's well educated. He can sit and build a bomb. I'm just telling you. I'm not saying he has. I'm saying he can. He has spawned a mad scientist. He's just a brilliant, loving, giving soul. But he's also honest. So when Tim told me a story about his childhood, to tell you I have no reason to doubt him does not do that line justice. Tim's an honest guy. He would sit in his living room with his mom and his brothers and sisters, whatever. And there would be children come out of his fireplace dancing and singing as shadow people around the room where they were sitting. It happened more than once.
I remember him telling this story.
And he told me this with a straight face as an event that had happened to him, much like happened to us. And it took him years before he even brought this up. We'd been in some of the most haunted places in America, and he had failed to mention this one. And he tells me this, and it's amazing. But it was there again, shadow people.
Yes.
And they came out of fire.
It's crazy.
Okay. So Tim and I are at Waverly Hills, Louisville, Kentucky. My hands down favorite place to investigate on the planet. many souls, were left in that place. And there's many of my theories were given birth in that building.
Mm-hmm.
And those theories have driven many things, many projects in my life now that we're currently working on, aside from this podcast, that you all are going to see very shortly.
Mm-hmm.
And they're all based on things, theories, and a good portion were born in that building. So one story, though, that goes with our shadow people is we were on the first floor, and anyone who knows Waverly will know where we're talking about. Down past the pharmacy a bit, and there something amazing happened. Tim and I were walking, and we both saw a solid shadow to our right. It was a figure. It was a person. And it happened suddenly because we heard something. And I Iggy'd him. In wrestling, Iggy would be when I was giving you the business to let you know to reverse a hold. I apologize. It's carny. It's carny talk, but you need to learn it if you're going to listen. So I gave Tim a clue.
Mm-hmm.
And we had something we called the Scooby-Doo maneuver that also was born in that place, where we would, on the count of 3, turn around real quick with our flashlight, because what was happening is we would walk and we would stop walking and we could hear one step. And we would walk a few more steps and then we would stop on 3,
mm-hmm.
and we would hear, and it was like something was following us.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, all right, on the count of 3, we turn around, turn our flashlight on. So we did the Scooby-Doo maneuver.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The Scooby-Doo maneuver prompted me to see a bottom torso of flesh-colored legs
mm-hmm.
run into a room without a top torso. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So this wasn't that. This was better. So we're walking and we turn the flashlights on this thing, and there is a person like we saw in that house
mm-hmm.
in 97. There is a person in 2005 or 6 or whatever this was, standing there in Waverly Hills on the first floor, black shadow mask. We have 2 high-powered flashlights.
I'm sure they were, if they were Tim's flashlights.
High-powered flashlights
mm-hmm.
pointing directly at this thing who, if it had an expression on its face, it would have been, oh, crap. We were pointing it, and I don't know what in the hell came over me or came over Tim, and I don't know why the other one followed the first idiot. But for some reason, one of us decided to take off after this shadow. So help me God, every word I'm telling you is the honest to God truth. This thing took off running, and we chased it with our flashlights,
mm-hmm.
excitedly screaming. It goes into a room, a dark, dank, vacant room. It goes into a room, and we chase it all the way to that room with our flashlights, and Tim stops and goes, "What the hell are we doing?" And all of a sudden, it was that Tim Clark realization.
Right.
You've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
4 o'clock in the morning, and Tim just like, okay, we're done. And ain't nobody going to argue with Tim at that point, right?
Right.
Because Tim becomes dad at that point. We could be together. I could be the leader of the team, whatever, man.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. When
mm-hmm.
it gets to that point, Tim pulls dad. And when Tim pulls dad, Tim's dad.
He's like, we're leaving.
I'm son, he's dad. How it works. This was that moment
mm-hmm.
where it was like, what are we doing? Now, he was excited as a kid with a new bike.
Mm-hmm.
His eyes were completely I can remember seeing his eyes right now. He's just smiling ear to ear, but he's scared to death.
Right.
Okay. Took a few years off his life, I guarantee it. So that happened. And we me and Tim, we went back to home base, and we're sitting there and we're trying to figure this one out. And we talk about the obvious part of it, and we were shining a flashlight on it, and the flashlight light didn't go through it.
Yeah, it didn't disappear like a shadow.
It didn't disappear is what I mean.
Right.
The light could have went through it. I mean.
You could still see it.
You could see it. It was still there. Explain that to me.
I mean, I can't.
Now, he is a skeptical mind. Okay. If that was just me that seen that, that would not have as much stink as it has.
Well, no, not because, I mean, you both saw it and saw the exact same thing.
Yeah.
At the same time. So.
Yeah. So these are my shadow people ordeals. Now, there are more, but these are the top amazing, that thing Stacey and I saw, the shadows in the corner of the eyes, which is exactly what Art Bell was describing, is one of the things he was describing. And then that thing at Waverly that I had to throw in there because I think it deserves its spot.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an amazing sighting.
So I want to hear, again, guys and girls, listeners, our friends, I want to hear from you. I want to hear about your shadow people experiences. And, so I think this is something we need to explore more. It motivated me thinking back to art and to thinking back to the true paranormal shows.
I think, didn't he say in one of those episodes that he got like 4,500 letters, stories? Yeah. And he was just amazed at how many people had experiences with shadow people.
So here's the reason he was so amazed. He got full form letters.
Right.
Like he got full, it wasn't just a couple lines. It was full stories. When you're so motivated, when you see a movie or you love a band or something like that, you're so motivated that you sit and write everything out. That takes something. And that's what happened.
Well, and like I said, he got those pictures that he put on his website. And, I looked at those and I was really surprised at how many of the shadow people pictures were Hat Man. Yeah. And they talk about that too, because that's like a totally different thing.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. And that's something interesting. So we'll stay away from that.
Yes, we should stay away from that. But it's all in there. Definitely worth a listen. And check out those pictures too.
Yes. So there's more.
Yeah, there is more. Some of his more memorable callers. One of your favorites I know is Mel's Hole.
Oh, my God.
And the story of Mel's Hole, it started back in 1997. Everything was strange in 1997.
Very weird.
So this man called in and he identified himself as Mel Waters. And he was from the Ellensburg area. And he called into Coast to Coast to have this conversation about a mysterious hole that was in the ground on his property.
This is so classic. Again, you got to listen to this episode.
And he claims that federal government agents seized the land with no explanation. And they paid him to they forced him to lease them the land. And he ended up having to move away. But supposedly he says that there is this hole that was virtually bottomless. He has no idea how deep it was. It had paranormal properties. I think basically people just threw their trash in it. And he got curious one day and was like, this hole's not filling up and people have been throwing their trash in here for as long as
20 years.
Yeah, for as long as I know as I can remember. And so he is a fisherman, like a shark fisherman or something like that.
He said he was nearly a professional shark fisherman.
And
I'm not sure what nearly a professional shark fisherman is, but I don't think the job longevity is good.
No, probably not. So he claims he had these huge spools of fishing line that you use for that kind of fishing.
Yeah, so many feet.
And he put a weight on the end and he lowered it into the hole and let it just go down on its own. And according to his count, that the line had gone down like 80,000 feet. 80,000 still hadn't touched the bottom.
Yeah, he was exactly. I mean, he knew for sure that it was 80,000 feet because of how many spools he had used of the feet. And dear God.
Well, there were a lot of other claims too. Other people said that they had seen a black beam coming from the hole and that portable radios, when they were held to it, they would play music from the past. They wouldn't work properly. And
That's awesome.
and I think there was some kind of story about a dog that died and got put in the hole.
He told that on the first time, and he said it kind of in passing, but he's like, yeah, you know, so-and-so, it's his story. It's not my story.
Right.
He said he threw his dog down there, and then, you know, right after that, we seen a dog wearing his collar. And
it's like exactly the same.
Yeah, it was the dog, you know, so resurrection hole.
Right. And supposedly he never did give the exact location of the hole. He just said that it was on his property. But I think there was like another guest, like a Native American, that claimed that he knew where the hole was.
Right.
And had been there several times. And Mel was on the program.
That guy tried leading an expedition to the hole, and they had like 30 people with him at one point, and they couldn't find the hole. Right.
And he actually called a few times again, like a couple years later, and they would rebroadcast the story, and it actually became pretty famous.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely famous.
And I'm actually going to link to an article that has the whole history of this story. And
the debunking of it.
Yeah, it's actually an article where this geologist named Jack Powell, he grew up in that area, and he worked for one of those companies where you have to send surveyors out, stuff like that. Right. And he knew of a hole that he thinks was the inspiration for the story. He doesn't think that it's a real story.
Right.
But, you know, you never know.
To listen to it, and I invite everyone, if you haven't listened to it, then go listen to Mel's Hole, especially the first one. The story, to listen to this guy is convincing.
He's very genuine, isn't he?
Very genuine because of his good golly gee gosh, you know, you know, parts to him. And it's hard to explain really why it's so accurate sounding, but it's just so, you know, like, yep, you know, sure do, you know.
So matter of fact and everything.
Yeah, just very matter of fact. And it's an interesting story, to say the least.
It is very.
Like I told Stacey, if I was going to make up a story, I think I would make up something other than Mel's Hole.
Right.
You know?
Well, I think that there's some local like journalists tried to find information on Mel Waters, and they couldn't find a Mel Waters. They couldn't find him owning any kind of land. He claimed that his wife worked at the local university, and they couldn't find that.
Well, I want to throw this out there. Okay. Let's say that Mel had a hole that belonged to the reptilians. It belonged to some kind of alien race. There's some kind of secrets down there that we're not supposed to know. Right. You know, a number of things. And the government did find out about it. Okay. And they needed to shut this up. Bad. Let me tell you, boys and girls, if you happen to have something on your property that is going to rewrite the history books and topple religion, they're probably going to make sure that your wife doesn't work at that university.
And that you don't exist.
And you never existed. I'm not saying that Mel's Hole is real.
Right, right.
But I have seen stranger things.
We're just saying that is a possibility of something that could happen. Right. So another one of our favorite things that happened with Art Bell was in 97 as well. September 11th, 97.
Strange year.
It was.
September 11th.
Yeah, September 11th. The night of September 11th going into September 12th.
Okay.
This was the Area 51 caller.
Right.
When they were talking about Area 51.
That's so good.
And
it's this one is so iconic.
Yes.
Tool made a song about it.
Yeah, I think it's actually been used several times.
Oh, it's it was used. Remember last year when that mysterious thing came across the televisions?
Yeah, and then there was pieces of this in it, and we recognized it right away. We talked about it then, I think.
Yeah.
So I actually have the transcript here, but I'm not going to read it because we're actually going to just play.
Yeah, we're already demonetized on this one.
We're just going to play the interview. So listen to that, and then we'll be right back with you.
Line, you're on the air. Hello.
Hello, Art.
Yes.
Hi. I don't have a whole lot of time.
Well, look, let's begin by finding out whether you're using this line properly or not.
Area 51.
Yeah, that's right. Were you an employee or are you now?
A former employee.
Former employee.
I was let go on a medical discharge about a week ago, and I've kind of been running across the country. Oh man, I don't know where to start. They're gonna they'll triangulate on this position really soon.
So you can't spend a lot of time on the phone. So give us something quick.
Okay. Okay. What we're thinking of as aliens are they're extra dimensional beings that an earlier precursor of the space program made contact with. They are not what they claim to be. They have infiltrated a lot of aspects of the military establishment, particularly the Area 51. The disasters that are coming, the military. I'm sorry, the government knows about them, and there's a lot of safe areas in this world that they could begin moving the population to now, Art.
But they're not doing anything.
They are not. They want the major population centers wiped out so that the few that are left will be more easily controllable.
Discharge.
I started getting.
In some way, something knocked us off the air, and we're on a backup system now.
It's the government, or
I don't know.
it has to be something, though.
Well, did you hear? Now, you tell me because you were listening.
That was awful strange.
There was a really weird guy on the air when it went off?
Yeah, real weirded out.
Like going sort of sounding paranoid,
Yeah.
schizophrenic.
Like crying and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how far into the conversation was it when it went off?
Just a couple, about 15, 20 seconds, I'd say.
Oh, you
Something like that.
guys missed. You really missed a call then, and I've got a feeling somebody didn't want you to hear it.
Yeah. Because it was really strange. All of a sudden, I'm hearing Mark Furman, and
That's right. Well, the network, of course, went immediately to a backup tape while we tried to figure out what blew up here. So that's what you heard happen. And then we're now on a backup link system to be on the air at all right now. So, well, I'm telling you.
Am I on the air right now?
You're on the air right now. Well, you better be, yes.
And
where are you, by the way?
I'm in Michigan.
Michigan.
Yeah, I called the other night, and I wanted to ask two things.
Real quick.
Well, I wanted to say one thing, and I wanted to ask another.
Real quick.
I wanted to ask if you could play that remote viewing one when you were while you go to Egypt.
Yes.
And also, I wanted to know all this stuff about like Area 51. If it's like the government's trying to put it out there like that, so like some other place isn't being watched as much.
In other words, it's a big decoy. I see what you're saying. Aaron, apparently we'll be back after the news, I think. Sandy here. We lost all transmit capability on this end here in Nevada. The transmitter went belly up suddenly for some unknown reason. I've never seen it do this in all the years that we've been on the air. I have never seen the transmitter in this way just simply fail, massively fail, like a massive heart attack or some kind. And so we have gone to a backup system to get signal to you right now, and I presume it is getting to you right now. Totally bizarre, folks. Totally bizarre.
Okay, so very creepy.
Yeah,
very
absolutely.
creepy and memorable. Definitely
Very memorable.
Now, I know that in 1998, a gentleman called allegedly called back and claimed that he was the original caller and that it was fraudulent, that he just did it. But a lot of people say that his tone and his mannerisms and his voice made it sound like it was not the same person. That they didn't feel like he was the real caller. Again,
if you have a hole outside, that'll take you to another dimension. Your wife probably will not be working at the university and you didn't exist.
Exactly. And I also saw that it said that a comic book writer named Brian J.L. Glass, he called in to Jimmy Church's Fade to Black, and he claimed to be the man behind the call. Right. Because I guess, everybody wants to be
the man behind the call.
So definitely one of my favorites. This one's definitely one of my favorites.
I'll tell you, it has to be the most iconic.
I think so.
It really does. It's the one thing that people remember the call. The Area 51 call. People that are just casuals have heard it, even if they didn't know what it was from.
Right. They've actually heard some or all of it.
Yeah, and then like most of these stories, the crazy thing is how many people have they inspired? How many people did Art Bell inspire or motivate or at least give that little spark to go out and pursue paranormal teams or ufology or ancient Egypt and all these great things, stuff that we're still talking about today. And oh my God, speaking of that, I can't believe I didn't mention it a while ago. I have to mention it now because I forgot.
Okay.
Government. So on one of the Shadow People episodes, this is nuts, guys. This is bananas. All right. So, and this will make, speaking of Alan Marston, this will make his head explode because it's the two things he talks about.
Oh, yes.
So it was the 2001 May, I believe it was May 31st, 2001. And look, if you find the May 2001 Shadow People episode, Art Bell with a doctor, lady doctor.
Yeah, I mean, there are only so many episodes about Shadow People.
You're going to find it. Just look it up like this. You're going to find it. So at the first 5 minutes of this episode, he starts talking to this lady doctor. She wasn't like a lady doctor. She was a female doctor. Lady doctor is a whole different ball
That's a
field.
totally different thing.
Yeah. So he's talking to this female doctor, and why do you just say doctor? I'm trying to just put it here so you know which episode you're listening to.
Exactly.
So anyway, he's talking to this doctor, and she's mentioning crazy things, and she almost has like a fake British voice. And I hate to say it, I mean, she has a beautiful voice is the problem. Okay. It sounds like someone who's doing a fake British accent because her British accent's so posh.
Right.
But she's like, oh, thank you, Art. And of course I sound like a redneck that's got something stuck up his butt. But, she's like, I've listened to you, just very Princess Diaries.
Right. Very educated sounding.
Yeah.
Yes.
And so anyway, she starts talking about weird things, and she's like, because she's the leading authority that has a book at the time on Shadow People. She had been studying Shadow People at the time for 11 years. I remember this well. So going back and listening to this, because I got very inspired this week when Art passed, and I was like, he's the reason I did a podcast in the first place. I need to do something. Going back and listening to one of my favorite episodes, oh my God, did it blow my mind and Stacey's mind as she was sitting beside me when this happened. So this 2001 podcast, this lady is on there, and she says, they're talking Shadow People right at the very first. And she goes, some weird things have been happening because I am truly believe that Nelson Mandela died in 1991. She just goes right into it, right? And she goes, and several other people believe the same thing, but it's like it's changed. Okay, this was 2001.
Right.
This was 2001. well before I thought that, I know it's way before the Mandela effect was coined.
Right.
But people were talking about it back in 2001.
Yes. And, I was really surprised because obviously something they had talked about before, because she kind of just passed over it like it was something that they had talked about and went on with her shadow people thing. And we were just like, wait,
so what theory does this destroy on Mandela effect? Do you know? CERN.
Oh, yeah, that's true, because
it obliterates it.
Yeah, because if that was happening already, then that couldn't have been.
Yeah,
couldn't have been CERN. Oh, that's too bad. I really was wanting to pin that on CERN.
Yeah, sorry, CERN. Not sorry. You should never have done.
We're sure you're up to something.
Yeah, nobody spends their spare time doing a mock human sacrifice in front of their facility. I'm sorry. I've worked at a lot of places, and none of those places at lunchtime did anybody go, "Hey, Bob, why don't we go put on some robes and fake that we're killing a human?" Oh, that sounds like a great
stress reliever from our high-powered, atom smashing jobs.
Let's go, Robbie. Do you think Cindy Lou's up for it? Why does it always have to be a girl? Shut up, Cindy.
I don't know. That is true, though. And it was pretty crazy that, it had been mentioned back then. So,
yeah, I thought I needed to throw that in.
That's okay.
But on the inspiration part of this, so many things have come off of Coast to Coast, and definitely Mandela effect has to be one of those.
They didn't call it Mandela
effect. This is one of those places where you go to talk about this,
right?
And we need these platforms, okay? And the beautiful thing back then, it was radio. I will own a radio station. I don't care if I really don't care if this is if it's the cheapest AM, radio station that is in one of those little brick buildings, like one of those 10 by 10 little brick buildings on the side of the road with a big antenna. I've already, it's one of those things. I want a radio station and I want to broadcast on the radio. Something is so romantic about the all night broadcast on the radio, because I think in my head, and of course I'm kidding about the radio station. We go worldwide now. Okay. We go worldwide, and there's something so romantic. The same reason I do this, I think about the fact that somebody could be driving a truck right now at 3 a.m. and listening to. All right. Well, this has been a crazy night.
It has.
We started this off as somewhat tongue-in-cheek, saying what an interesting and weird episode this was going to be.
Yes.
Little did we know that we were going to be victimized during this episode.
It's crazy.
Several times. So this one rattled the great Stacey to the core. The reason that this cut and this edit is like it is, I'm just going to explain what happened on my end. We actually went on from the part you heard last.
For a couple of minutes.
For a couple of minutes. Stacey went into the next story, and I was talking about something, and I felt this cold wind come from behind the chair that I'm at. And, I'm directly underneath the attic.
And you're basically almost against the wall.
Almost against the wall. This cold wind came all over my arm. I was kind of frozen, and I felt it. Didn't really have time to say anything about it, because at the same time I was sort of hearing something electronic. It was weird, man. It was like I heard something. Something. I shouldn't say electronic. I heard something like, but all of a sudden, instantly, our entire computer system went completely dead. Now, it went hard dead, like someone had held the power button in, which is the only way to make it go dead like that.
Right.
It's plugged in. I'm talking our entire system is plugged in. There was no power failure.
Nope. The lights didn't flicker.
There is battery backup on our system. So battery backup didn't even kick in. It was complete shutdown, not power loss. Shutdown, not power loss. Now let that sink in, because that doesn't happen.
No, and to get it back on there and it not have all the stuff that we said.
Yeah.
Like it actually cut you off mid-sentence several minutes before the computer shut off.
Yeah.
So it's very weird. I mean, it was very weird.
Yeah, it's strange. And you know, it's when we went off the air, Stacey looked at me and she said, I'm rattled.
I have no explanation for that. Like normally I can think of an explanation, a possible explanation, but I have no explanation for that at all.
Yeah, well, my arms still feel strange.
Well, this room's felt strange all night anyway.
Yeah.
Well, let's just get into what we were talking about.
Let's do that, but let's not downplay the importance of whatever's going on. I don't know what this is leading to. I don't know what the whispers were. I don't know what any of this has been.
Right.
But boy, oh boy, is it strange.
Right. It is very, very strange.
You know, we didn't even mention the fact that Art Bell left us on Friday the 13th.
No, that's true. He did.
That's so fitting. So fitting. But anyway.
So what we were doing is John was talking about the romanticness of having a radio station and being on the radio and being in people's, you know, personal space. And
right. And I prefer the fact that we do have the podcast. I'm a big radio fan and old radio sagas and stuff. But that's basically the nuts and bolts, how many people that the Coast to Coast inspired and the fact that, you know, for the last 8 years, we've loved thinking about everywhere that we've been, you know, listened to, from stocking groceries to, you know, digging graves or hiding bodies.
Okay, exactly. So then I started going on because I said I had a few more guests I wanted to mention from Coast to Coast with Art Bell, just some repeat guests and some more interesting ones just to kind of wrap it all up. And so I was talking about Ed Dames, retired U.S. Army Major Ed Dames, and he is the remote viewer. And he was on Coast to Coast in 1995, right after Nightline did their piece on remote viewing, and they interviewed like former CIA director and some other CIA agents. And Ed Dames decided he wanted to go public with his story. He was part of that secret spy operation with the Army. And so he talked to Art and he told him about his involvement and that he was a trainer and he had no idea why the CIA was coming out about it now, because they were spreading disinformation and half-truths. And he wanted to go on the record with the real story.
Right.
And he also agreed to talk about some other Black Ops projects.
Wait a second. Did you say the government was giving disinformation and spreading half-truths?
No, it's shocking.
How dare you say that about our government?
Shocking.
Now let's see. Is anything shutting off? Because that's exactly when it happened last time.
It was about there, yes.
All right.
He did agree to talk about some other secret Black Ops projects, which now I think are all sort of classified under Stargate, you know, the psychic warfare project. But since he was a remote viewer, he did make several appearances on Coast to Coast with his remote viewing. He would do remote viewing for world events and different kind of state of the world and what's coming up and that sort of thing. But he did a lot of paranormal topics as well. And some of them were a little bit controversial, people thought. Like he remote viewed Roswell incident and he tried to remote view Bigfoot. He did a remote viewing on chemtrails. He even did a remote viewing on Satan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So you can find all those. They're very popular on YouTube. You can find.
There was another remote viewing Art Bell thing that because Art throughout his career did not really. The jury was out for him on remote viewing and
right. Well, I think the jury's out on just about everything with him.
Well, you know, it's kind of like I was with crop circles for so long, and of course I changed my mind on that. Right. And oddly enough, on a Larry King interview with Art, he gave like 2 seconds on crop circles. He was like,
he's like,
absolutely, I believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he's like, yeah, the guys out here stomping around, yeah, they could account for some. They can't account for some of the ones that he had seen, you know. So I appreciate that. But one of the funny things, and I don't know which, it could have been Dark Matter. It could have been, you know,
one of the shows.
One of the shows.
Yeah.
And it was one of the latter shows because this guy was reminiscing about the old days of Coast to Coast. And he called in Art. And he called in on a weird line. Because Art was trying to be like, okay, there can only be one of 4 reasons you're calling in on this line. And
Right.
And it was the Hot Diggity guy. So if you look up Art Bell Hot Diggity, you'll find this. So this guy was just talking to him. He's like,
He was so happy.
yeah, he's like, something. He's like, do you have a weird fetish? And he goes, oh, I sure do. It's you and your voice. So you think it's going to go somewhere, but Art, as always, sounds like you sound like a lovely man. We'll talk to you after the break. So, when they come back, he's talking to him and he's like, hey, and he kept mentioning the Radio Shack. He's talking about where Art broadcasts from, his room there, his Radio Shack. And he's like, he's talking about remote viewing, but he doesn't say remote viewing. He goes, ever since I was a kid, I could just take off running down the street and then I was flying. and he's like, I could go where I wanted to and stuff. And you had people on there talking about it. And he goes, and I got pretty good at it and I could watch you while you're recording. And Art's kind of like, oh, that's strange. And he goes, I went to Vegas and went for a convention to train with Ed Gaines. To find out how to remote view.
Ed Dames.
Ed Dames. Sorry.
Ed Gaines is somebody totally.
Yeah. Sorry. No. Sorry to the memory of Ed Gaines there. He went to go train. Yeah, you don't want to go train with Ed Gaines. Just future knowledge. You don't want to train with him or look that up. Anyway, he went and trained to remote view. And after the one day, he was like, nah, they wasn't doing it very good. So he said, I got this strange thing. I decided I was just going to drive to your house because he had remote viewed him so many times. And
I think he described like his studio and stuff.
And he did. He's like, because you've got the studio now with the monitor and the ceiling. And Art's like, very strange. And he starts describing his antennas.
Yeah. Because I think he was like, I was just going to see if I could drive right to your house. Now, Art lives out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, on purpose.
Yeah.
And he did drive right to it. And then he starts describing the antennas. And Art's like, okay, I got to go. But it's one of the remote viewing ones. And I thought it was lovely because, a couple times during the history of Coast to Coast, these people remote viewed. One time Art lost something and they told him exactly where to find it. Another time he said, what's in front of me? And a bunch of people sent the drawing in of what was right in front of him. Perfect, beautiful, lovely. And I love stuff like that, I love stuff like that. But pray continue.
Well, a couple other of the more interesting guests is in 1994, it says on March 23rd, 1994, Bell interviewed this man named Neil Chase, who had predicted the nuking of New York City for that exact day. Like he predicted it was going to happen that day. So Art had him on the show, but then he lost his radio composure. Art did, which is unusual. And he read a headline that came over the newswire just at the start of the interview that said Newark has been nuked.
Yeah. Wow.
And so the headline actually referred to an eyewitness account of a pilot that was flying into Newark. And there was like a gas explosion, but it looked like a huge nuclear explosion. And so the guy predicted that that New York was going to be, there was going to be a nuke, but what he was seeing was the nuke-like looking explosion.
And maybe the headline.
Yeah. And Art was just like blown away by that, completely blown away. And I thought that one was interesting because he doesn't usually become hysterical and lose his composure.
Yeah. And that shows you really on psychic readings. Over the years, Art has had thousands of psychics, and predictions. Now, I'm a little torn on this. I'm a little torn on predictions over the airwaves like that. And I'll give you my reason for that. Okay. I would love to sit here and just do predictions. Right. And I would love to sit here and have people on every week doing predictions. But my problem I have with it, Stace, is I feel like that giving the predictions, you alter something. I believe there's always a couple of paths that you can go.
Right.
But if you do give the prediction, I believe that's almost planting that seed out there.
Right.
That could happen, or maybe it prevents somebody from doing something, or maybe it encourages something to happen.
Right.
And that's the only thing that always messes with me about that.
Well, I mean, I agree with you on that because, I think it's really unfair with psychics. Now, there are charlatans.
Oh, there is.
There's definitely people.
Without a doubt, there are charlatans and frauds, always has been.
Absolutely. But there are genuine psychics.
Absolutely.
And I think that they don't get a fair shake because people don't understand the impact of getting a psychic reading. Like, let's say Bob was writing a book.
Yeah.
And he was finished with it and he was knocking on doors and he was, sending it out and working really hard trying to get it published, decided to go to a psychic and to find out if it was going to get published. So he goes to the psychic and she says, oh yeah, it's going to get published. I see this path where, it's going to be published in a month because he's working on it.
Right.
So then he goes home and he thinks, oh, it's going to get published. He stops knocking on doors because he's been told that it's going to happen.
Right.
So then it doesn't get published because he's not continuing on this path that he was on. He's changed his path because of the psychic reading. So then what happens? The psychic gets blamed. Oh, you were wrong. You're a fraud. You don't know what you're talking about. But that's not what happened. But he altered his course. Right. What happened was he stopped working the way he was supposed to be working. He stopped doing what he was doing and he changed his path. Because everything can change in the future.
Absolutely.
It's all subjective.
Right. And the reason, sometimes I believe that, these people have the gift because, and here's the thing about it. I've had, even if you're religious, you should believe in psychics because they're in the Bible. It's just a thing. There's always been seers. There's always been people with, predictions and deadly accurate and real time future predictions. It's real. It's a real phenomena. And we know it well is real, and we've seen it happen, and it can be very powerful. It can be very warming to someone who would like to reach out with a loved one that's probably near and get that last message, and all this stuff. And I love all that. My only problem is really the predictions. It feels like parlor tricks that people are wanting people to do, and I believe that it can. I believe that it can lead to, even some people living their life based only on what this tells them to do,
Right.
I even think about that with horoscopes because sometimes it says, hey, don't start any new business venture today. What if that actually prevents you from
doing something you should be doing?
From doing something you should be doing. So,
well, I mean, that just raises that question. Like, does getting a psychic reading change what your psychic reading is just by getting the reading?
Right.
I mean, it could happen.
Yeah. Chicken or an egg.
Yeah. It's a real question. And it is something that I think about a lot. Now, I'm not talking about mediumship. I'm not talking about a psychic medium that's talking to your loved ones or whatever. That's a different thing. I'm just talking about psychics that are looking at situations in your life or telling you about your path. So if you ever go get a psychic reading and they tell you something's going to happen, for the love of God, don't change your path.
Yeah.
If you want that to happen.
Yeah.
Just, I don't know.
Keep doing what you're doing. And, I don't know how much intervention is supposed to be happening according to the universe.
Right.
So it's just something, and it's a little bit off topic, but psychics have always been a big part, and predictions have always been a huge part of the show that we're talking about right now. So I just thought it'd be interesting to bring that point up.
Yes, that's interesting. Well, I have one more that I want to mention.
Okay.
And I only want to mention this one caller because I've seen the information for this call several places, but I can't find the episode and I can't find any clips of it. So I want anybody that knows anything about this to let me know because I'm really interested in this one. And this is supposedly from March in 2005. A man called in about some disturbing events on Johnson Atoll and Kwajalein Atoll. They're like islands that are just U.S. military only. And he claimed that they had been testing a weapon that only targeted certain people and could leave other people unhurt.
Right.
I guess like a direct energy
like
kind
a
of
death
weapon,
ray.
Something like that. And he said that these weapons had been tested back in 1993. And while he was on the phone with Art Bell, Bell lost the call because another voice supposedly came over the line with a click, and it said, "Shelton, terminate the call from A6." And then the call went dead. And then Art tried to call the man back, but was not able to. So that's the description of what happened, but I wasn't able to find the actual clip for this.
Jesus.
Yeah, and I thought that was really weird too. Because,
Now, this one I don't know.
no, see, I didn't either, but you can find the description of it on several different places. So I'm wondering, I mean, I don't know why that would be out there if it wasn't a real thing. But if you go to the Coast to Coast website and you look at the archives, they don't go back that far.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't able to find anything about it. And it was a very short thing that happened in the episode. So
It's very what's the frequency Kenneth kind of thing.
yeah, it's very strange, very strange. But I think we did some justice to the memory of Art Bell.
I believe so. And hopefully, and I'm sure most of you have your own memories, your own fond memories of this. And of the show. And, you know, Coast to Coast is still going strong. George Norrie does a fantastic job. Dave Schrader, Darkness Dave, and a host of others, you know, do the guest hosting and do a wonderful job on there. And hopefully the show will go on for many, many, many moons. I will tell you, it's been a huge inspiration to me. I can count on one hand the inspirations from every field that have actually influenced me. And that's definitely one of them. When I needed some answers or needed somebody that was as crazy as we were.
Yes.
That was a good comforting place to find it. Yes. So for all those creepy nights, you know, I hope that we've done some justice to that memory. And I tell you what, we've had some crazy stuff happen over the course of the show so far, guys. I can't explain what's happened in this room even.
I don't know. It's so weird. I could have sworn I saw an orb. I know it's terrible, but a little ball light. I could have sworn I saw one back over behind your head to the other side just a few minutes ago.
Really? Well, when?
I don't know why you were talking. I didn't want to interrupt you. It's been maybe 3 or 4 minutes ago.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Really
all right.
strange.
All right. Well, moving on.
Yeah. Well, I actually do have some news stories, some other news stories, and we're just going to move on with those.
All right.
All right. So what's been going on this last week? This is a story about how NASA basically missed a huge asteroid that came really close to the Earth. And I'm talking about between the Earth and the moon close.
Are you serious?
Yes.
And they missed that coming?
And this was on Saturday. Yeah. It was a giant asteroid the size of a football field. And they only noticed it at an observatory at an observatory in Arizona just a few hours before it flew by.
We're all going to die.
Just a few hours.
We're all
so it was going
die.
about 66,000 miles per hour. It was about half the average distance between the Earth and the moon, which is seriously close for an asteroid. And you know, a lot of these asteroids that they pick up on are usually pretty small. This one was like the size of a Walmart. Like it was huge. But unfortunately, it's not big enough to be caught by this specific telescope they have that kind of scans for huge asteroids. And it's really hard to catch them because, you know, you have to be pointing in the right part of the sky. And you know, they gave a lot of reasons why they couldn't find it.
Bullcrap's butthole. they catch. Hold on a second. Do I have to do this again? Do I have to do it again?
Yeah, probably.
You know, is it like, Tommy, are you looking through that? Are you looking there? What about Clarence? Are you guys looking through the reflector lights? And you know, come on. Come on. We're looking at, they're telling me about the alien megastructure 14 Gsons away.
Right.
Okay.
But they can't see an asteroid that's flying up a butthole.
They can't see a freaking asteroid flying up the butthole of the Earth. Yeah.
Well, they said that NASA estimated the asteroid to be between 47 and 100 meters wide. And when they were given their reasons why they didn't see it, you know, that you have to be at the right spot and stuff, they did mention that they had the program for asteroid detection, although it only scans for asteroids that are 140 meters wide.
Do you know what that reminds me of?
What's that?
You know the Star Wars parody from Family Guy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
With Darth Stewie. and they're sitting there describing the station to him. And they're like, it's virtually indestructible. And he's like, nah, I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't ask, you know. And he's like,
there's a small
he's like, it's
hole.
99.9%. Yeah, what's the one? Well, there's this little small hole, and it's probably, you know, and that's probably not the size of a womp rat. You know, if a laser goes down in it, it could, you know, destroy the Death Star. And it's like a pretty big design flaw. It's what that reminds me of, okay? Because it's like, well, we have this telescope. It's a super telescope. All your taxpayer money, thank you so much. Well, they never thank us. But your taxpayer money went to it. It's $49 billion, and it probably cost $10 million, and the rest of it went to black projects. But it's just crazy because that bothers me.
Well, here's my question. This is what kind of bothers me. Now, do you remember the asteroid that hit Russia and a bunch of people were injured and damaged all the buildings? Okay, so it says in this article that one was 3 to 6 times smaller than this asteroid.
Right.
And it did that much damage. But this asteroid's not big enough to be detected by NASA's program. So why did NASA write a program where they can only detect asteroids that were so large?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I mean, can't they write the program to detect the small ones too?
Yeah, I mean,
it's NASA.
Yeah, I mean, I think that we need, you know, I really, now I'm really afraid because I was pretty sure we had some kind of star defense that we just weren't talking about.
Maybe they don't use it unless it's really, really dire.
Okay, all right.
I don't know.
I'll keep telling myself that at night while we're hurtling through space.
Well, this next story, you're going to love this one. This is by our good friend, David Mead.
Oh, boy.
You remember David Mead? We haven't talked about him in a while.
I do. I was figuring he had been lynched by now.
He's the Christian numerologist. I'm doing air quotes if you can't tell by the way I'm talking. Christian numerologist that claims that the world's going to end. He did claim the world was going to end last year.
I wonder if we could find his program on christianmingle.com.
Probably. So he has predicted now.
Occasionally predicts the end of the world.
The world's going to end.
Enjoys horseback riding. Long walks by the lake. Numerology of the Christian variety normally ends into world predictions that are incorrect.
Well, April 23rd.
Yeah.
Which is only in, a few days.
Yeah.
So supposedly April 23rd, he's quoting the same verse that he quoted back when we were having the eclipse and it was the end of the world then. And it all has to do with Nibiru. It's going to appear and then it's going to pass the world in October. So somehow the world's going to end in April, but then also in October. So I don't know what.
Pretty strange. So basically what's happening is he's reading from the Bible and having several different interpretations of something that never comes to pass.
Well, it's like this certain star alignment. And I guess he's using different stars and saying that they're going to align this certain way. And that's why it's going to happen, which is what he said last time.
Really?
But what's funny is there's another website.
It's lucky we don't have wars over stuff like that.
There's another website. I don't know if it's space.com or one of those space websites that actually came out and said his alignment he's claiming is totally wrong. Like that's not even going to be the alignment on that day. And there was even an article, and I'll link to it, in Christianity Today. And the headline of that article is, "It's time to end the stupid about the end times." Basically just calling him out and, claiming that he has no idea what he's talking about and denouncing him as a Christian, basically, like you're embarrassing us. Could you please stop? That's basically what the article says.
I think he's actually been hired by the government to spread disinformation and make Christians look,
Well, let me tell you something. The funniest part of this article, and you're going to get the humor in this. They asked NASA's lead scientist, Dr. David Morrison, about this. And he, of course, debunked the existence of Nibiru or Planet X because he said there's no credible evidence, whatever, for the existence because there are no pictures, no tracking, and no observations. I'm sorry, I thought we just determined that an asteroid almost hit us and they didn't see it till it got here. So I'm not sure that's really a good
listen and
a good explanation.
There's 3 words. 3 words. Scientists are baffled.
Yes, they are.
We have a damn t-shirt for sale. And I would encourage you, go to either paranormalsideshow.com or tpublic.com, teepublic.com/user/paranormal-sideshow. Scientists are baffled. Let your local scientist in your town know what you feel and that they are baffled. And if you see a confusing look trying to stare at your chest, either run, yelling stranger danger, or it's a scientist who is upset and trying to figure out why your shirt says that. Not all scientists.
No, not all of them.
There's scientists that listen to this show that I know are not baffled. No. And I really love scientists and astronomers and really, 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 really. I mean, this is like it's my passion, but there are scientists that are baffled. There really are.
Yes, there are. All right. So let's move on to this next story. Now, this is sort of an update of a story that happened a couple years ago. And I'm pretty sure that we talked about this back in 2016, but it may predate Paranormal Sideshow because it was in 2016.
So it could have been on Third Side.
It could have been. And this is a story about how the United States reduced their staff in Cuba because of a mystery illness. Do you remember this? I don't know if you remember. There was embassy workers over there, and they were being plagued with this mystery illness that nobody could figure out. And one of the theories was that it was somebody was using sonic weapons on them.
Right. I remember that. I do remember this.
You do remember this. And so the United States actually reduced all non-essential staff, like 60% reduction, and even urged Americans not to travel there because they had no idea what was going on. So this new article is actually about Canada pulling the families of their diplomats out of Cuba. So like anybody that's got their post there, now it's a post where you can't bring your family because they still, to this day, don't know what this illness was. And it's so weird because the way it started was the embassy workers claimed that they heard loud, strange noises that were described as chirps, hums, scraping sounds, and that they felt a ghostly breeze around them. And then soon after that, those that were affected had like hearing loss, ringing in the ears, cognitive impairment, headaches, balance, and sleep issues, which are all really odd symptoms.
Yes.
So then in 2017, some doctors did some studies on some of the people that were there and that had this illness. And they found that there were changes in the brains of the people that experienced the symptoms, particularly in the white matter.
Wow.
Yeah. But they still have no idea because they claim that any of the things that they proposed would do it, including sonic weapons, could not explain the symptoms that these people were having. And even doctors at the University of Pennsylvania examined the United States embassy workers and documented the various cognitive symptoms and claimed that none of those.
So is this all happening in the same place, or is it
in Havana?
Okay.
Because at the embassy, like the United States Embassy and the Canadian Embassy.
Are they side by side?
I actually don't know, but I think they're both in Havana. But so this new recent article is just about how Canada has decided to pull the families, the wives and the children, because they don't want them over there because nobody can tell what this mystery illness is. It's so strange. I just thought the symptoms were really odd because it sounds like, if somebody in our line of work gave us those symptoms, we'd think their house was haunted.
Yeah, well, it sounds like a demonic haunting.
It's very strange.
It's very, very strange. It sounds like it definitely sounds like some kind of haunting.
Yeah, but except that their whole brain matter changed and stuff.
Well, I mean, there's been a lot of the ringing of the ears has been a huge deal across the planet. And that's another thing people have talked about. CERN, people have talked about. I've had it. It's been more than a little bit tinnitus, and my blood pressures, all my vitals are good. It's nothing like that, and it it doesn't really go away that much. And Stacey has it from time to time. It's
occasionally, usually in one ear.
I've read a lot of stories about people having it.
All right, so let's move on. So this next story is about a UFO monument in Sheffield. And this is a monument that is there to commemorate the UFO and alien encounter that was declared true
Right.
by the Historical Society, the Great Barrington Historical Society and Museum. And this is the one about the Thomas Reed family. And, you know, that's the whole series of abductions with Thomas Reed and his family. It started in back in 1966.
Yeah. It's a multi-generational abduction story.
Yes. Now, the one incident that they declared true, the Historical Society declared true, was the one in 1969 when they were in their car and they were driving and they saw some strange lights and the car died. And I think they remember being taken into some kind of room. But then the next thing they remember is being in the car and the mom and the grandmother were in the wrong seats. And it was a lot of witnesses that saw lights and it was a lot of evidence. And so they considered it a very historical event and they actually, put it in the archives as a significant and true historical event. And I'll actually link to an article. It's a really good article from a few years ago. Alejandro Rojas did it.
Right.
And so I'll link to that so you can get all the information on this story. But the recent story is that there's a monument. It's like a huge stone monument that they put up it has a plaque in it, commemorating this event. And Tom Reed, I think he was the youngest one. He was contacted recently because the city came out and said they needed it to be moved, that it was on city property. Now, when it first got put up, they had to move it because it was too close to a covered bridge. It was on city property. So they moved it to this farm. And the man that owns the farm was totally surprised. He was like, I thought this was my land, and I told them they could put it here. But now the city's saying that it's like an easement or something and they had to move it. And Reed, he was like, I worked with town officials to find that spot. They chose it. Yeah. But now for some reason, they've been given paperwork and told they have to take it down or move it or find somewhere to move it. And they gave them a deadline.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
Is absolutely crazy. So I think he said that some UFO enthusiasts and some people that funded the memorial, and they have benches and lighting and stuff, that they're going to try and take legal action to prevent it from having to be moved. But kind of an interesting story. It's just very strange.
Yeah, it really is.
That all of a sudden they decided that after helping him find a place to put it, that they needed that to be moved and that it commemorates such an amazing incident.
Yeah. So. I mean, there's either some kind of weird conspiracy there or it's local town politics at play.
It's something. It's very strange. Very strange. All right. So this next story is just something I wanted to mention. I thought it was pretty interesting. The headline is The Silurian Hypothesis. How do we know that humans were the first civilization on Earth?
There you go.
Yeah. And so it was this study that has been published in the International Journey of Astrobiology, but it's
by
actually
Theodore T. Rex.
Just called a thought experiment.
Right.
And it was a scientific paper authored by Adam Frank, who is an astrophysicist and the director of the NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies. And what they decided to do was try and figure out how they could tell if there was a civilization on Earth before humans, if there was no trace of a civilization. Do you know what I mean? And what they figured out is that, us now, we leave a footprint. Our industrial age, it's only been around for a few hundred years, but we're already leaving a footprint in the geological aspect of the Earth.
Okay.
So they are saying, what if, we could find evidence that there were these geological footprints, but it was, millions of years ago. Right. Would that prove that there was another race on the planet before humans?
Yeah.
And so it's not a real study, there was not experiments and stuff. It was basically just this thought study that I thought was really interesting because they feel like they could use this. It would have a planetary impact on civilizations on other planets. What would they look for on another planet to prove that civilization had been there? Right. And I just thought it was really interesting. They named it the Silurian Hypothesis after after the Doctor Who episode. Yeah. Of the Silurians who supposedly lives on Earth hundreds of millions of years ago. Right. So let me go ahead and end the suspense here for them. Hopefully they're listening. Yes, there was people here, probably humans. And just as we just increased how old our current normal human being looked like us and was on Earth, we went from 175,000 years to 300,000 years BC.
Anyway, I forget the exact dating, but I know it doubled. Last November we had the story, and it came out, and that was just because they found that one, and then of course that's the absolute well, that's the oldest one we're gonna find, Bob. Absolutely, that's done. Until they find the next one, which takes it back even further. Right. I believe, and this is just my belief on this, is I believe that much like Göbekli Tepe and all these other things they find that are, tens of thousands of years old, it goes back way further than that. I believe that if you look at ancient Egypt, I believe that there's a lot of things that are way older. Even things that are ancient have things more ancient that they're built on top of. Right. And a lot of that stuff, they really can't figure out how it was done. They really can't figure out how a lot of this architecture, how a lot of these stones were put, a lot of, just how it was done. And a lot of it looks like it was laser cut, at least laser precision tools. And they didn't have the kind of tools to cut the way they did cut. And that's a whole nother story for a whole nother day. But yes, there was something here. Was it giants? Was it, that walked the earth with the dinosaurs? Was it the damn dinosaurs talking and taking smoking and having, smart? You never know. But yeah, and it's just like we talked about before. When you think about the fact that there was freaking gigantic dinosaurs ruling the earth, and they're just gone, but it was this earth. And it really happened. And if you think about looking out your door right now and seeing
NASA had been around, they would have seen that asteroid.
Yeah, there you go. I mean, you think about looking out your door right now and seeing a long neck taller than the tree, just walking down the street. No, you can't imagine that. But that was on this planet. And with all the stuff they've hidden, and I dare say if the dinosaurs were not dug up till today, we would never see anything about them. And
well, I just thought it was really interesting that they even did this study. They're even considering the possibility that they could find evidence. I think it
all goes back to the alien phenomena, Stacey. I believe that they know.
Well, somebody from NASA's involved. Yeah. So I feel like they know something, and they're just,
I believe that they know. I believe it goes back to kind of, I talked about it earlier, with the Bob Lazar thing. If you go back and watch that special from the 80s, and you can still find that network special, Expose. I
used to love network specials. They felt so special.
You could find that network special that was a live special, and you could find it still on YouTube. But it's really cool because they have the guys with the blacked out faces and the voices like, I remember that I said, and like the guys that would flip for the mobsters, and I never understood it because if I was a mob king, and I'm sitting back and they're saying, tonight at 6 we're gonna have somebody turn over Don John, and I'm sitting back there watching, and it's like the one butthole that you knew was probably going to flip on you, but they cover him up. They put the shadow, but you can still sort of see his outline. And
right. You can see his clothes he's wearing and stuff.
And they put the thing on there like that's going to keep me from whacking him, right? Because
I recognize that head shape.
Yeah, but anyway, I digress. On this show, on this episode, it reminded me because they were talking about this experience they had with an alien. Okay. At the government facility, and he had this cube, and in the cube that you could look in the cube, and it would there was this crystal, and it would show throughout events throughout time. It would show like landscapes from another time. It would show their planet. It would show like Abraham Lincoln. I don't know.
Wow.
All this stuff. And of course, we know that most your bases for all your computers and smartphones and stuff would be like your crystals, right? Your quartz or whatever. And there's a lot based on that, on these precious gems and all this stuff. Back when this was made, there wasn't smartphones, and we weren't thinking about things like that and thinking about flipping through pictures, right?
Right.
But they were talking about that back then. And all I can think about now is, you could absolutely have all these pictures and stuff on these crystals. So I just think that it's all related. I think that our ancient races, for them to come out and tell us about that, they would have to come out and tell us about some stuff about our ancestors. And I think it's kind of strange. I think it's related. I do. I seriously think that it's related some way, somehow. Right.
Well, I mean, I do too. That's one of the reasons why I got the story was I just thought the whole thing was a little bit odd.
Right.
All right. So 2 more stories here. This one's about some odd animal behavior. And this is about the baboons that used barrels to escape a research facility.
And here it goes. And so it begins.
Yeah. So the animals actually pushed a barrel over near the fence. It was too close. And one of them jumped up and got out. And so 3 more jumped up and got out. And then they also escaped another fence that was around the perimeter and started running around town. Like they just took off.
Yeah. So do you want to know what happened?
What happened?
I've got it on good authority.
Okay.
So they're there at the scientific lab. And there's a guy there. He really hates his job. He's a part-time temp.
Right.
His name's Timmy.
Of course it is.
And Timmy's sitting there, and he's playing Castle Crush on his phone. And his buddy Fred is, he's got his iPad there, and he's like, I'm going to watch a movie. And
Planet of the Apes. Is that what he's watching?
So he's turning on one of the most recent Planet of the Apes. And just leaves it playing.
Right.
He decides that he needs to take his other device into the bathroom and think about some stuff, and just leaves it playing while these baboons are watching this Planet of the Apes movie. I'm just telling you, it just takes that one little thought. The monkey see, monkey do, right?
Exactly.
So it's coming. It's inevitable.
I mean, I think they got pretty lucky because there are actually thousands of baboons at this research facility.
Not me, buddy. I would not be in there. If I was in there, number one, there's not, aside from Jane Goodall, there are very few people that like primates as much as me. Like, as I've talked about, I would have an orangutan in that corner right now. I would have an orangutan in that corner. He would be my best friend. I would hold his hand and take him everywhere. And
I'd lose my front seat in the car, wouldn't I?
Oh, are you kidding? So I could say right turn, Claude. it would definitely name him. I want to name him Hyde.
Okay.
And I think it would be cool. We could have 2 of them. We have Jekyll and Hyde. And I think it'd be awesome. We need monkeys. Can we have monkeys?
We can't have monkeys.
Okay, so if we get really rich, then can we have a monkey?
I don't know.
What if we make like a monkey pool house?
I'd have to take care of it.
No, not if I have a monkey pool house, and we'll get like one of the, like a rent-a-maid, and just pay her extra, because those girls, those girls work really hard. I've got some friends that do that for a living, and they get to see some pretty nice houses at the same time, and we can hire one of them and just be like, it's a pool house, but I've got monkeys living in it.
I don't know, monkeys that big are mean, aren't they? They can hurt you.
Not if you treat them nice.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
They got a pool. We could put like a banana boat out there.
Oh my goodness, a banana boat.
It's like a boat made out of a banana. No.
Oh, we'll talk about it when we're really rich. How's that?
Yeah. All right. All right.
Last story. This is another strange Alexa thing. So remember we talked about Alexa doing the creepy
God,
laugh.
I'm glad we don't have Alexa in here right now.
I know. Well, this is a story about how, and you can look this up. There are several videos. Someone asked Alexa what a chemtrail was. And Alexa's response, and I'm going to read you her response. She said, chemtrails. Trails left by aircraft are actually chemical or biological agents deliberately sprayed at high altitudes for a purpose undisclosed to the general public in clandestine programs directed by government officials. So that's what she said. Yes. So somebody took a video of that. And of course, Amazon found out about it and claimed that it was just an error and it has been corrected. So now if you ask Alexa what a chemtrail is,
swamp gas,
she'll say chemtrails refers to the trails of condensation or contrails left by jet engine exhaust when they come into contact with cold air at high altitudes. So that's what she says now. I would like to point out that a contrail and a chemtrail are two different things. That's the point of the two different words. But apparently she just says they're the same thing.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really funny. I watched the video, and I know that Alexa just does an internet search or whatever, but
I don't know, bro. Look, here's the whole thing with it. When that was happening, really bad, with the laughs and and the being mean and stuff, there's enough things that get haunted and possessed. Of course, ghosts can. I mean, what do we use to communicate all the time? We use, half broken radios. I mean, I'm just being honest.
Right.
We use hacked radios. We use, unscrewed flashlights. We use, because the spirits can manipulate, and we have to get a baseline off that to make sure we're communicating with it.
Right.
But why not? If there's an Alexa sitting there,
is that what you're going to do when you're a ghost? Are you just going to haunt people's Alexa items and tell them weird things?
I'm going to figure out how to do some stuff like skywriting. I don't know. I'm going to do something major.
Well, I feel like that this article kind of missed the point because Amazon went in and corrected what Alexa says. So basically, Amazon has edited what Alexa says when you ask a specific question, which means they can do that for any question.
Yeah.
Which means it's not really, she's not searching the internet and giving you true answers. She's telling you what Amazon has told her to tell you.
Well, yeah, we knew that the whole time. I'm sorry. I've always said I'll be first in line for the chip. Okay, when they say, "Hey, we're going to put a barcode on everybody," I'm going to get in line first. I'm going to flip and go to the other side and protect my family and round the rest of you up.
He's coming. Just know it's fine.
It's just going to happen. If you're nice to me, I'll give you extra pork and beans. I'm a survivalist. That doesn't necessarily always mean I'm going to live in the woods.
Right.
That may mean I'm going to put the black stripe on my arm and burn your farm down. Okay. Yeah. So I've always said, I have nothing to hide. Like because they know already. We've been on a list since lists were invented.
Yes,
okay?
I agree.
And because we talk about everything, FEMA camp, we talk about everything.
Careful, I don't want the computer to go off again.
that everything they don't want you to talk about. And we used to talk about even more 9/11. That is something, things that they're not too keen on you talking about. So we've kind of came up off that a little bit, fluoride, and we've gotten to a good place where we keep it real, but I don't care to carry the iPhone. I know they're listening. I know they can view. I don't care to have the the Xbox camera on. If they want to see me scratch my butt at 3 a.m, more power to them. So we've got all these devices, and we know they can listen. My car, my God, they can watch me, listen to me. Probably
see where you're driving.
They can drive me around, take over my car if they want to. I mean, but I've got a problem with Alexa. I think that is to the point of just saying, all right.
I mean, you're basically putting a microphone in your room going, here you go.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
Easy access listening to everything I say.
I mean, we did disconnect our Connect.
We did, but not
We
not
did.
because
We did
of
that
the,
out of paranormal necessity.
Yeah, we didn't do that because of the government. We did that because
Of the ghost.
it kept recognizing Ariana because she's the smallest, and she wouldn't even be in the room. We'd just be sitting there, nobody be moving. All of a sudden, be like, "Hi, Ari." And we'd be like, It's
the last thing you want when you're sitting in the room, man. It's just like, "Hi, Ari." It's like, no. But I don't know. If you have an Alexa, there you go. Here's another thing for the pool. Let us know. What's your thoughts on that? Do you believe that it's just another way for the government to listen to us? And I go back to was it The Dark Knight, where he used the technology to triangulate the positions.
Yeah,
by
like the
listening
sonar technology or something.
It's just, it's so real. It's so real. But anyway, so it's some really good news. All right. Well, there you go.
Definitely one of our more interesting shows. And I certainly hope that everybody has gotten to listen to it, because I'm still a little skeptical right at this point.
Yeah.
That it's actually going to get put out.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I feel the same way. I'm skeptical that we're going to see tomorrow. I mean, seriously, there's some stuff going on, guys. There's some really weird stuff going on tonight. So this has been straight up, and you know, it's so funny. The first of this episode, I said this is going to be, you know, a crazy one. It's going to be a wild ride.
Oh, and don't forget to let us know about that EVP.
Please let us know about the EVP. And I will say, this is already my favorite episode. This is my favorite episode we've ever had because there's been a little bit of everything.
It's been very strange.
And some good times. And rest in peace, Mr. Bell. Thank you for all the memories. Thank you for all the inspiration. I hope that we did you some sort of justice.
I think with all the weird stuff going on, there could not be a more fitting tribute, could there?
Absolutely. I don't know, man. This has been a crazy show, but you know what? Speaking of crazy, ParanormalSideshow.com. That's your place to go find everything crazy. On Facebook.com, it's /Paranormal Sideshow. On Twitter, it's @Sideshow97. Instagram, Hot Crazy Damn. It's John and Stacey Edwards. On YouTube.com /Paranormal Sideshow. That's where you can find our vlog. And it's almost warm. It's not freaking warm yet, guys, kids, people.
Still cold.
Still cold. Still snow. Please take a quick moment to like us, follow us on the internet, that is, and subscribe. And it costs extra to like us in real life or to follow us in real life. You can like us in real life, hopefully. But we do have follow us packages available. That's a DM, please. And anyway, follow the podcast
Follow us packages
on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, iHeartRadio, anywhere you listen. That's where we're watching you from with your Alexa. And be sure to showcase your inner weird. Support your favorite paranormal podcast. Check out all the t-shirt designs. And if you are a scientist, by the way, and you want a scientist or baffled shirt, also DM me and I'll see if I can't hook you up with one. Just
because you're a scientist and you're going to wear it.
And I'm going to check and see if you're really a scientist there, Norman. I know better, okay? No, tpublic.com /user/Paranormal Sideshow, or you can just do it off the website, paranormalsideshow.com. And why don't you go there anyway and check out what the Mr. Stacey has been doing with all her news links and everything that she puts so much effort into, and play along. You can play at home, listen to the podcast and listen and look at the stories at the same time. It's fun for hours. You can entertain your family, annoy your grandma. But anyway, for my beautiful, lovely, and incredible wife, Stacey, my name's John. So long from the Sideshow.
Good night.